Thank you so much, Tivadar. Thank you very much. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm really very grateful to you for accepting our invitation to celebrate together the day of the Hungarian-Pakistani friendship. Unfortunately, quite a few guests could not come today. The majority of those guests should have come from Lahore, but something happened today in Lahore. Maybe you know better than I do. But anyway, thank you very much for coming. Yes, Tivadar, there is an obvious question. What is this day of friendship, I mean Hungarian-Pakistani friendship, is about, and why 10th of March? The answer is as obvious as the question itself. Because on this particular day, 10th of March, 1822, the first Hungarian traveler, the world-famous Hungarian Orientalist, Sándor Kőrösi Csoma, has arrived to this part of the world, what we call today Pakistan. This was the first ever encounter between our two peoples. Kőrösi came to this part of the world to find the descendants of the Hungarian tribes were scattering around in Central Asia 1100 years ago. He did not find them. Instead, he decided to stay here for the rest of his life. And that is how the people-to-people relations between our two countries began. And so this is the 200th anniversary of this visit, which we celebrate today, and that is why we decided to declare 10th of March as the day of the Hungarian-Pakistani friendship. So when our governments in 1965, they agreed to set up diplomatic relations between Hungary and Pakistan, we had already a very long history of friendship. The first encounter was followed by new ones, and some Hungarians stayed here for years, other Hungarians stayed here for decades, but there was one common thing which was true for all of them, that they had a large contribution to the intellectual, to the cultural, to the spiritual, to the scientific life of Lahore, Karachi, and all the big cities in the 19th century. It is enough to mention only one example. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the example of the Punjab University. Quite a few people know that Punjab University was established in 1882 by a Hungarian professor. His name was Vilmos Leitner. 1882. 5 years later, 87, another Hungarian professor became the registrar of the Punjab University. The same person, Aurel Stein, who 4 years later became the first principal of the Oriental College in Lahore. And you know, we can continue this list of Hungarians who had their contribution to Pakistan. But the list would not be complete without mentioning the name of August Schöft, the famous Hungarian painter, who also arrived to Lahore in the 1840s and spent 4 years in the court of the Sikh ruler Ranjit Singh. The Hungarian painter painted beautiful pictures, one after the other, portraying the families of the Sikh royal family, and members of the Sikh royal family, and their everyday life. And then these pictures started their long, long journey from Lahore to Austro-Hungary, from there to London, then finally from London back to Lahore. But of course, this 150 years long journey, well, after this long journey, after more than 150 years, these pictures, they were in very bad conditions and they badly needed restoration. And this was the moment where our embassy, my colleagues and our embassy, we had the initiative to restore these paintings, which later on became the largest ever cultural project of our bilateral relations. You know very well that the bottleneck of every project is the financial background. I tell you frankly one thing. To initiate the project was much easier than to find sponsors. And that is why I cannot emphasize enough that without the invaluable financial support of the Bank of Punjab, this project could never be finished. And you know, mainly, and yes, this was due to the financial support of the Bank of Punjab that we could bring back these paintings to their original grandeur. And now we can enjoy those paintings. Let me give today a special welcome to the President and Chief Executive of the Bank of Punjab, Mr. Zafar Masood. Mr. Zafar Masood, the man who was behind this generous support with his Passion Reborn. And really, he is one of those very few men here in Pakistan I call a real Renaissance man. Very few of them are still with us. A real Renaissance man. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not my last word to you, but that will be later on. Ladies and gentlemen, we are living in turbulent times. Each country has enough burden of its own. I think that people-to-people relations, they can help us to ease the burden. These burdens. That's why, during my activity as ambassador here in this country, for the second time already, I always tried to work on the strengthening of people-to-people relations. You know, governments are coming, governments are going. You can change governments. One thing you cannot change, the people. They remain the same. So it's much important to have good people-to-people relations. anything else. That is the basis of basis. And that's why I decided to initiate this day of Hungarian-Pakistani friendship, the 10th of March. I would like to remember that with turning this date and the celebration of this date into a habit. Whether we will succeed or not, this will be answered on the 23rd of March, 10th of March 2023. We will see. So that's it, and thank you very much. Thank you for coming again.